Hey, thanks for coming, John, here today. Just had a few questions about the upcoming Iowa caucus. I know you had a great experience back in 2008 in Iowa. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about your experience.
Sure. I'd been helping the campaign manager for Western Iowa, based out of Council Bluffs, for a couple of months, and decided to fly in and helped with the campaign. Found out on the day of the campaign that even if you're not from Iowa, you can participate in the caucuses. In fact, you can do everything at the caucus except for vote. So there were a couple of precinct captains who were MIA, and I went to one of the precincts and basically took over as the precinct captain for the campaign.
Great, great. So tell me a little bit more details about that day and where you went, how many people there were, and just what happened throughout the caucus meeting.
Yeah. So that day, we were making phone calls, just doing get out the vote work, and finding out what was happening with the precinct captains, and then the campaign manager in Council Bluffs said, "Hey, can you go to this precinct and organize?" And at that time, we found out you can do anything. So I said sure, and I went. And when I got to the room, it was in like a middle school. And there were the different precincts were going into different classes. The Democrats were going into a classroom, and some of them in different classrooms, and we were going into Republicans were going into other classrooms for their precincts. And when I got into our precinct classroom, there was maybe about a dozen people there, and a couple of Ron Paul supporters. And then as people came in the room, we would ask them, "Hey, are you a Ron Paul supporter by any chance?" And they would say yes or no, and that. At the end of the day, exactly 50 people were in the room. At least exactly 50 voters were in the room. And there were exactly 6 people voting for Ron. And we sat all together. And then all the Huckabee people sat together. And Huckabee was, it was pretty prominent. And then the other people, sat together. The party conducted some business. And then it got to the point where we were going to do the straw poll on the presidential candidates. And each group got to choose one person to speak on behalf of their candidate, and there was a great guy, a recent veteran, a guy who had served in Iraq, just got back from Iraq, finished his final tour there, who was a Ron Paul supporter, and he and I split the time, and he spoke about what his thoughts were on the war and why he supported Ron, and then I spoke on behalf of Ron, and we both spoke from our hearts and with passion. And then they went and they counted the votes.
Okay, great. And what were the results of that precinct?
So keep in mind that Huckabee was polling really well, and he was plugged into the activist evangelical political network there. And of the 50 votes in the room, Huckabee got 20 of them. And then we started out with 6 people supporting Ron, and we ended up picking up 14 votes on the spot. And tying Huckabee for first with 20 votes.
That's great. That's great to know that.
And I'd say of the undecideds, we probably won 80% of them on the spot.
That's great. So it just lets you know how important these speeches are, and
it makes you wonder what might have been.
Mm-hmm.
Because I learned later on that night there were probably of the 1,700 precincts I think that there were at that time in Iowa. About 500 of them didn't have precinct captains. And, what would have happened if passionate Ron Paul supporters got up and spoke from their heart and won votes on the spot? How many more votes might Ron have won, and how much would that have changed his positioning in Iowa? How much that might have affected his momentum going into New Hampshire? We might have had an entirely different outcome in 2008. I'd hate to lose that opportunity, our last opportunity to support Dr. Paul in 2012.
All right, great. So just kind of a recap, you started out in the caucus with 6 Ron Paul supporters, with you and another Ron Paul supporter speaking on his behalf. You gained 14 more votes, and you gained 28% on that very day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And some huge percentage of the undecideds. 2012.org apparently is going to be doing a speech contest, and if you have the time and the resources, you should maybe think about, what would you say? How would you, from speaking from your heart, how would you try and convince people in 2 minutes why they should support Ron Paul? And apparently RP 2012 is putting together a contest where they're going to ask people to upload their potential caucus speeches in Iowa onto YouTube. People should do that and then email it over to rp2012.org. And they're working on finding some of the stars of the Liberty Movement to judge the videos and take the winner and fly them to Iowa so that he or she can give his or her speech on behalf of Ron Paul on the night of January 3rd.
that's fantastic. And any last words?
Yeah, this is our last chance to support the great Dr. Paul. So I'm going to be there on January 3rd. I hope to find a place where I can fill in and speak from my heart about why you should support Dr. Paul. Look, if we win 3, 4, 5% of the vote on that night, it could mean the difference between third place and first place and change the dynamic of the election going into the live free or die state in New Hampshire. If Dr. Paul does well in both of those states, it'll knock a lot of other people out of the box and get us down into a position where people have to pay attention to just him and whoever else is left. It'll give it could be the difference between whether or not we have a President Paul or not. So if you can do it, please do whatever you can. This is our last run at this in this race, and I hope to see you in Iowa on January 3rd.